very good morning to you, South Africa. Let's take a look now at issues relating to basic education. Now, despite welcoming the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, Equal Education is still concerned with some aspects of that bill. The Bela Bill will now be taken before the National Assembly after the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education adopted it this week. Now, once legislated, parents and guardians will face legal action if they submit false or misleading information for school admission. Parents preventing their children from attending school could also face jail time of up to 12 months. Let's bring in Katherine Sutherland, a researcher at Equal Education Law Centre. A very good morning to you, Katherine. Thanks for your time this morning. Now, one of the key issues that you are highlighting as your organization, Equal Education, is the criminalization, you say, of parents and caregivers. Break this down for us. What do you mean, the criminalization of those entities and parties?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So the Bela Bill essentially, increases the jail time for parents who don't allow their children to go to school. Or parents or caregivers, and we're concerned about this because it doesn't actually address the underlying reason that children don't end up going to school. So very often parents will not let their children go to a particular school where the infrastructure is so bad that it poses a physical threat to their children's safety. Or if a household is child-headed, how does that work in terms of this piece of legislation? So we kind of need to see a more holistic intervention to get children back into school, and criminalization is not the best way to do that, because really what it does is it threatens to punish caregivers and parents for things that are often somewhat out of their control, and then it potentially risks the possibility of taking children or separating children and parents. Now, which is definitely not in the best interest of a child.
This bill has been years in the making, and there has been a consultative process. What was your input to the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, specifically regarding this? You highlight that sometimes it's actually not even within the powers of the parents for the children to go to school. What are the solutions that you have brought forward?
So we put forward quite a few. We've asked them to take out any provision relating to criminalization, because that we know criminalization just generally doesn't necessarily work. We also haven't really seen the current legislation that we have also criminalizes parents, but for 6 months, and we haven't really even seen that used. So what we're asking for is a more holistic intervention, put in place roles and structures and responsibilities for the various stakeholders, like teachers, like parents, and principals, to engage and to identify early warning signs of learners dropping out, and potentially support structures. And one of the biggest things that could happen to aid children staying in school is ensuring that they have a safe and conducive learning environment at the school.
Another aspect of criminalization that is brought forward is parents submitting fraudulent documents to the schools. Are you also contesting that aspect of it?
So initially that provision, it was combined with a provision that would create intergovernmental committees. So we know that no documentation is required for learners to be admitted into school. The courts have confirmed that. The Department of Basic Education has released a circular confirming that. And what the bill tried to do was it tried to list required documents that were needed, often that seemed unnecessary to have or to require. And if learners if they didn't have the required documents, the principal would refer them to the intergovernmental committees, who would then supposedly assist them with getting documentation. And the members of those intergovernmental committees were included the Department of Home Affairs and the South African Police Services. So it was indicative of the fact that it was going to be used for immigration control rather than assisting learners to get documentation. Luckily, that has been removed, but in terms of submitting fraudulent documents for the purpose of school admissions, again, this is something that we often see in every admission cycle every year, when parents will submit that they live in a particular area because they aren't happy with the schools that are in their area and use a different address. And it doesn't seem like criminalization is an appropriate sanction for something like that, when we know how hard parents have to work to get their children into schools that are of good quality.
So you are basically saying that you are fine with parents misrepresenting themselves and misrepresenting their children, basically lying on these applications because of the circumstances. Is that what you're saying?
No, in no way am I saying that it's fine. It's obviously not ideal. But what we are saying is that criminalization for wanting your child to get into the best possible school is not an appropriate sanction. We can look at other things like fines, perhaps, or trying to ensure that there's legitimate and quality schools in people's areas and communities. But in no way is it in the best interest of the child to criminalize your parent or caregiver for trying to look out for you.
Well, thank you so much, Katherine Sutherland, for putting your views forward regarding this particular bill. It will now be going through to the National Assembly to be voted on. That was Katherine Sutherland, researcher at the Equal Education Law Centre.